Yes, ma'am has joined and it's 6 o'clock. So we'll start with the session. Good evening, dear experts and participant. I welcome you all on the fourth successive day of AICT ATAL FDP on preserving local dialect using multi-layer perceptron for sustainable development of the communities. Today we have session 7 on dialect instrument of change by Professor Dr. Pushp Lata from BIT Pilani, and session 8 on the topic Dive into Multi-layer Perceptron by Dr. Angshuman Paul from IIT Jodhpur. To start our today's session, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Sonia Kaur from the Department of English and Soft Skill at PIT Jaipur. Ma'am, I would like to request to start with the session.
Thank you so much, Krati ma'am, and welcome to all the participants in online FDP, and heartily welcome to our distinguished speaker of today's session, Professor Pushp Lata ji, distinguished academician affiliated with the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at Birla Institute of Technology and Science, Pilani Campus since 1994. And in her great career of 30 years, she has held various teaching and administrative positions. Her broad areas of interest include English language teaching, translanguaging, and multimodality, gender, culture in education, language and migration, and critical pedagogies. And Professor Lata has authored 16 seminal books and disseminated her scholarly insights through 24 research papers in Scopus Index and peer-reviewed international journals, along with 25 book chapters and good number of papers in esteemed international and national journals. She serves as a reviewer for several national and international journals. Professor Lata is a passionate teacher and is known for her interactive and engaging pedagogy. Additionally, she has conducted over 90 workshops and training programs catering to students, educators, and corporate professionals, covering diverse topics such as effective communication, managerial communication, innovative pedagogy, academic writing, soft skills, group discussions, and job interviews, thereby enriching academic and professional domains alike in a wonderful manner. And we are really happy to have you here, ma'am. And welcome to the session, and welcome from PIT as well. Welcome, ma'am. Ma'am, your mic
Thank
is
you.
mute. Huh?
Yeah,
Yes, it's
yeah.
on. Yes.
I was waiting to open it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia Kaur. I'm truly humbled by this generous introduction that you have made.
You deserve this, ma'am. We have shortage of words, but you have a wonderful description, ma'am.
It's really so nice of you. And at the outset, I really thank Professor Krati Sharma and Professor Ashish Ladda, who had been instrumental in having me here. And in fact, when Professor Krati Sharma and Professor Ashish, they approached me for this workshop, the title itself was so fascinating for me. I said, okay, so preservation of the dialects, that is something really great. Because I have already supervised one thesis on this, and another one I'm doing.
Great,
So
ma'am. Hmm.
usually it happens that FDPs are on new pedagogies or use of technology in teaching or maybe syllabus designing, so whatnot. But here was this, FDP, which was on preservation of the dialects and the instrument of change. So I said, yes, it would be really an honor to be part of such kind of FDP. So I really thank both of them for
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
an
ma'am.
opportunity to be part of this. It's very well conceptualized. I am really grateful to both of them for having me here. So I'm really grateful to all the participants who are there, and I will try my level best to do some kind of value addition to your knowledge and experience. So let's see. With your permission, could I share my slides?
Yes, ma'am. That's your session now. It's over to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Slides are visible, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so here we go. So thank you once again. It's an honor to be part of this FDP, which is being held in Poornima Institute of Engineering and Technology. The theme of this FDP, preserving local dialects using multi-layer perceptron for sustainable development of communities. It's really speaking a lot about what is required to be done in today, and especially when it comes to uh, the academia, they really require to see that we should be able to preserve our language and culture. And keeping that in mind, the efforts are being made, at the local level, at the at the national level, and even at the global level, efforts are being made. So when we are sitting across on this online platform, and we want to talk about dialects, which are an instrument of change. So I have planned this session where I will try to introduce you, what do we mean by dialects and how are they different from language. Then role of dialects in cultural identity, because it's very important to understand that what kind of role dialects play in preserving the cultural identity, in exerting our uh, cultural identity. So we'll try to talk about it. And we will also see the dialects as a tool for social change. It's not just, it's the carrier of the culture, but also if you want to bring a change in the society, then also you need to make use of the local variety of the language that uh, if we use, we can always touch the hearts and the minds of the people. So we'll see how it will work as a tool for social change. Then challenges in preserving the dialects. What are the various challenges that we are facing? And then we'll also talk about that now this is the age of technology, and with the emergence of AI and machine learning, how we can really take help of the technology to preserve our dialects. So that also will be covered. And there comes a doubt when we talk about preserving a language, or working towards the conservation of language and culture. Is it possible? Does it really happen? Yes, that happens, and there are successful stories for linguistic revitalization, and we will also see one or two cases where it has been done. Future of dialects in this AI age also will be touched upon slightly, so that we can see what kind of projects we can apply, because I am very sure most of the participants, either they are research scholars or they are academicians. And keeping that in mind, I thought that I can really touch upon that how we can really take up this assignment on preserving the dialects and our cultural identities, and how different projects by various agencies are being done, and how we can contribute towards that in terms of research, and with the action based projects. So I have included this part as well. So within this limited time, I'll try to see that I should be able to add some kind of value to all these aspects of yours. Coming to introduction of the dialects, first I would like to map the local dialects in, if whether you know about this or not. So I would like to do one poll. Ashish, Professor Ashish, could I request you to float
Yes, ma'am.
this
Yes, ma'am.
poll?
Sure. I'm going to float.
Yes. So the question that you need to answer is: do you think people who speak a similar mother tongue speak the language the same way? So people who speak the same language, do they speak the same way? This is the question. Professor Ashish, will I be able to see the results, or you will tell me?
I'm going to share the link here in the chat box.
Okay.
On
Okay.
that link, we will be able to know.
Okay.
No, ma'am. Can I?
Okay. Should I read out then?
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. So the question demanded for you to see that yes, all of us speak the same variety of language, and the other option was no, we do not speak the same variety, and the third option is do not know. So could you just answer that in your chat box and tell us that do you think people who speak the same language speak the language same way?
Ma'am, that link
Yes,
has
or
been
no?
shared in the chat box, so participants may answer by clicking on that link
Okay.
or
Okay.
in the chat box as well.
Yeah. Perfect, perfect, Professor Ashish. Professor Ashish, because I can't see the chat box and all, so you have to really help me with this,
Yes, ma'am.
please.
Most of the answers are no, and most of the they are giving explanation like no, the accent has been changed, the pronunciation is different, like that.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much. In fact, that's very true. We speak the same mother tongue, but at the same time, the variety of mother tongue that we speak is different because the variety of the language changes. आपने सुना होगा 4 कोस पे पानी बदले 8 कोस पे बोली. So that is very true. If you are speaking Rajasthani language, you know that there are different varieties that are spoken. It is possible that you are speaking Marwadi or Mewati, you are speaking Hadoti, or you are speaking Bagadi or Wagadi, variety of Rajasthani, or Dhundoti, a variety of language. Similarly, if you are a Punjabi speaker, you might be speaking Multani variety of Punjabi or Jhangi or maybe Lahori or Amritsari Punjabi. So you see that there are varieties of languages, which are there because with a smaller distance itself, we find that there is a change in the grammar, in the pronunciation, and the words that are used in different varieties. There is slight change, and it brings a change in the language. So the point is, when we are talking about the dialect is a regional or social variety of a language is broader, Hindi is broader, but Rajasthani is broader. For the people who stay there in Rajasthan, the kind of language that is spoken is Rajasthani, but in different parts of the Rajasthan, the kind of Rajasthani that is spoken, that consists of the different varieties. So this is called dialect. Now, David Crystal, who is the famous linguist, he has said that a dialect is not just a way of speaking, it's a way of thinking. Let me tell you, there is one concept in linguistics that is called linguistic determinism. It there are various linguists who have worked on this, and originally it was Edward Sapir who worked on that and said that the kind of language that we speak, it decides our thoughts. That means the language determines the shape of our thoughts, thinking pattern. So that means it's very important for us to speak our own mother tongue or own dialect, the own variety of language that uh, mm, we have been trained in our at our homes. And if you want to know how many languages are there across the globe, more than 7,000 languages. But you will be surprised to know that 40% of them are at the risk of disappearing. So it really alarms us. It really creates a concern in us that if we lose the languages like this, that means we are going to lose on our uh, the kind of knowledge, experience, the medicinal knowledge, or any kind of rituals or value system that the language carries, because that is the carrier of our cultural aspects. So in fact, At the global level, our UN body, that is UNESCO, United Nations Education, Social and Cultural Organization, it has recognized that there are languages, there are dialects which are endangered, and they have created a map which is called Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger. So we need to understand that how important, uh, our country is taking, how important, the international bodies are responding to this. Now, there is one particular project that is being run by National Geographic, and it is the project on voices, and it's a wonderful project. A lot of work is being done, and I'll play a very small video for you on this. Where is my cursor? Yes, please watch it carefully. Oh my,
Presenting
I'm
the
sorry, you
dazzling
have
new
to bear
desire,
with
the
this.
best and beyond.
They've been traveling the globe, searching for words and ideas at risk of being lost forever. David Harrison and Greg Anderson of the Living Tongues Institute and Chris Rainier of National Geographic were last in Northern Australia, where they interviewed a man who may be the last speaker of a language previously thought to be extinct.
My father.
There are 7,000 known languages in the world, but more than half are expected to die out in the coming decades. That's why the trio helped create National Geographic's Enduring Voices project.
Every 2 weeks around the planet, a language disappears, completely disappears forever and ever. So what we're doing with the Enduring Voices project is really kind of trying to bring awareness to this whole issue of language loss around the planet.
After Australia, the team continues the search, this time in the extreme northeast of India. The team arrives in a large village called Hong. After speaking to several villagers, it seems the local Apatani language is widely spoken among the older generation. But the endurance of a language, like many aspects of culture, depends on the youth. The team meets a young man named Vijay, who speaks English and Apatani. Vijay invites them into his home. Here, with help from Indian scholar Dr. Ganesh Murmu, the researchers record the basics of the local language.
How you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 4, 1, I.
In addition to conducting their own research, the team trains locals to use special language technology kits. Each kit contains a laptop computer, digital video and still cameras, and basic digital recorders. The Enduring Voices team must press, but they leave behind the technology kit so that the community can continue to preserve this vital part of their heritage. The recordings they make will ensure that even if the last speaker of a native language dies, it won't be the final word.
So you have seen that how this is being, an effort is being made by National Geographic, reaching the far east, very remote areas, and trying to understand that how many speakers are there, how it can be preserved. They are carrying the various tools also, you have seen. So it's quite encouraging, but it demands a lot of efforts, and nowadays a lot of projects are being done on this. So now you can see that, after understanding that how dialects are being viewed overall, and what kind of status do they have, but we need to differentiate between dialect and language. As we said that dialect is the variety within the language. So language is the standard variety in a way, and dialects are the, local varieties of the language. So language is an umbrella term, and dialects, you see that different dialects are there. So that is the, I'll try to play one video. I don't know, because only 1 minute cutting was possible. uh, So I could not capture the entire thing, but still I would like to play that how the dialect continuum plays a role. How a same language, when it is spoken by person A, B, C, D of different places, how it changes. My suggestion will be, please view this video whenever you get time. It's a video of 7-8 minutes, so please do that. But I'll just introduce this video to you right now. But before we go, let me again tell you what Max Wenrich has said. He's a very famous linguist. While studying the language and the dialects, he said that if you want to understand the difference between the two, we can say that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. That means you have, language is the head, and the head has its own different types of armies with it. So these different set of armies are not nothing but the dialects. So this is how we understand how language and dialects are different. You will be surprised to know, if you have not done your linguistics course, that linguists, they are not bothered about language, they are more bothered about the dialects. They want to study more and more the dialects, because dialects are the reflection of societal practices. Dialects are the reflection of the language usage. Dialects are the reflection of the career of the generational knowledge. So this is how you find that, the language is the umbrella term, but if you really want to capture the local essentials or local sensibilities, then you need to capture the dialects. Now, for example, if you speak Hindi language and you say that Hindi is my mother tongue, you should know, when a Bihari speaker speaks Hindi, that becomes the Bihari Hindi, or Bhojpuri Hindi, Maghai Hindi, Maithili Hindi, Hyderabadi Hindi, or Punjabi Hindi, Delhi Hindi. So you find that, these people, they will be able to understand each other, because somewhere there is some commonalities there, but at the same time the local variety will have a different flair to it. So this is how you find that dialects are the local and distinct in nature, and language is an umbrella term, and it is standardized and official. Now let me just play this small video for you.
So continuum is a continuous range of something. It could be anything. But here we're talking about a dialect continuum. Obviously, in a dialect continuum, you have a range of dialects. So it's a continuum of dialects. So you shouldn't think that dialect continuum is just one dialect. Dialect is here used as an adjective for continuum, like a qualifier. So how does that work? I talk.
So you can see that there are various varieties within a language. This is how it becomes the dialects. Please watch this video completely whenever you get time. Now it's time for second poll. Professor Ashish, please help me. How familiar are you with the dialect spoken in your native region?
Yes,
If
ma'am,
you're
it has been launched. Ma'am, it has been
okay.
launched. All the
Oh,
participants may
thank you.
get opinion
Thank
on
you,
this
Professor
post.
Ashish. So the first option is, I speak and understand it fully. I understand it but rarely speak it. I know very little about the dialects which are there in existing in my region. I'm not familiar with it at all. So let me see what is the outcome of this poll.
And some responses are option A.
Okay. So people understand and they speak fluently. Very good. There is no right and wrong answer to it, right?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
only thing is we are trying to map the awareness about dialects.
Uh, some responses are I understand it but rarely speak it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The situation is 50-50, I can see. So we really need this thing to be preserved.
Right. So the FDP that is being conducted is very relevant. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we understand that, we are not yet very aware of it. And if we are aware of it, we don't know how it is being used. So that those are the major responses. So let us see that how there is a historical evolution of the dialects. Why? What happens to the local variety? Do these local varieties change, or what are the major causes of the, some kind of changes in the dialects of a particular language? So let me tell you that migration is the major cause. Since time immemorial, uh, human beings, they have been going from one place to the other place, maybe for education or for trade or business, for several reasons, even for medical reasons also. They migrate from one place to another place. So migration also requires, because when people go to different places for day-to-day conversational purposes, they use their language and they want to understand other people's language. So the local variety also adapts certain changes in the language. So in fact, colonization is another major factor, which brought a change in the dialects, and the variety of languages they emerged. And globalization is another major reason. And what happens when these kinds of, these kinds of things happen in the society? It results into cultural assimilation, or maybe cultural adaptation. So as a result of that, we find that dialects, they keep changing. Overall language, it may change very slowly, but there is a possibility there could be some kind of swift changes in the dialects. For example, Konkani, which is used in Goa, when the Dutch people, they ruled Goa, there was an impact of Portuguese. So you find that there is a dialect which exists in Konkani, which is Konkani, Portuguese Konkani. So this is how you find a dialect. Or you find that Persian Urdu exists because there is impact of Persian language on Urdu. So this is how you find that colonization also might be instrumental in bringing a change in the dialect. Labov is one major researcher who has shown that how social stratification also may influence the evolution of the dialect. Let me tell you, my daughter, worked on the role of music in Naxalbari movement, and she tried to establish over there that how the music was instrumental in bringing the solidarity among the Naxal rebels. And the same, strategy was applied by the government in order to combat this particular Naxal movement. And they tried to create these songs, and they tried to make local people aware of the kind of, schemes they were coming up in order to reinstate them, or to provide the facilities, and, try to create the opportunities of growth. And that is how the government could really control this Naxal movement. So now you see that what Laubo is saying practically happened there, because that the moment it was used, it really helped. Another example I can give you, my research scholar, Dr. Shivangi Priya. Right now she's working in CIIL on a major research project on language. So when she was working on her mother tongue, that is Maithili language, because it was considered as a variety of Hindi, and it was not considered as an independent language. But in 2003, when it was included in the 8th schedule, it was considered as an independent variety of language. And then she observed that how Maithili is considered to be a language of elite people, and Hindi was spoken by everybody. So people who were writers, and who were politicians, and people in the media, they used to speak Maithili language, because it was the language of elite people. So social stratification also influences the use of the dialect. Dialects are the footprints of the history, as all of us know that, with the dialects, you have the local stories, and the kind of changes that happened over a period of time in the society, or the kind of practices that are done. maybe related to the birth of a child, or wedding, or maybe even medicinal practices, whatever is there. So dialects, they carry the footprint. So it's very important that we should preserve our cultures by preserving the languages. Now, coming to the role of dialects in cultural identity, if you understand that how dialects play a role in exerting the cultural identity, then you will be able to understand that if you are planning to do your research, or if you are trying to apply for a project in this area, what kind of what kind of aspects we need to tap upon. So, if you really want to understand this role of dialects, we need to really see the kind of stories, songs, and dances and the oral traditions that are very unique to that particular region and the language. So, you will be able to see that what is that you can really tap, because if there are less than 10,000 speakers of that language, you can always apply for a project. You can always do research on that. But of course, that would require for you to do ethnographic research, whether you are doing a project or you are doing your doctoral work. But it's really important to understand that there's a lot of space, lot of scope in this area to work upon. There was a study which was done in 2022, Pew Research study, and it showed that 70% of the people feel that if they speak their dialects, it enhances their connection with their roots, their association with the local place and the local people. And it really, in fact, Nague Thiong, who is another expert who works on language and culture, he argued that if you really want to decolonize a culture, like we had been, we were colonized by Britishers. You know that, Africans were colonized by Britishers, or some part of South America was colonized by Spanish people. So you know that. So this process is very important. Decolonization, a lot of projects are taken up nowadays. In fact, research work is also being done on decolonization. So Nagui said that, if you really want to decolonize a culture, it is only possible if you try to preserve the indigenous language, indigenous dialect. Otherwise, it is just not possible, because the kind of people have started learning the dominant language. There is certainly a loss of the local variety. There is a certainly death of the local language. So, in that case, their minds are colonized, and they are carrying the culture, the history, the understanding of their own reason and people, only by the only in the dominant language. So the narrative that will be set, that is being studied or that is set, is that of the dominant language, not your local variety. So it's very important what Nague has said. So now, we would when we look at these dialects as a tool for social change. So one example of Naxalbari movement I gave you, how government tried to tap into the dialect. So this is how people of Chhattisgarh and people of western eastern Madhya Pradesh, where a lot of Naxal movement was there, they were empowered. Those marginalized communities who were segregated by the mainstream society, they were empowered. They were given the confidence. Their culture was reinstated, and they were there were many cultural promotional activities that were taken up by the government to foster in them a sense of belongingness. So it's very important. If you want to bring a change, you have to convey your messages in the local variety. So not only in India, you can see abroad also it has been done. Revitalization of Maori happened in New Zealand schools. It was introduced in the curriculum, and in schools it was the Maori teachers were employed, and Maori language was used in order to teach the learners whose mother tongue was Maori. So it was a major project that was taken up, and that is highly successful. Ferrari has used it critical pedagogy, and he says that you need to make use of the native language if you really want to bring a social change. Let it be about. Excuse me. Is there something? Yes.
No, ma'am.
Okay. I'm audible enough.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, slides are not visible. Okay, so we were talking about the Ferrari's research methodology of teaching. So in his critical pedagogy, he said that it's very important to use the native language if you really want to bring a social change. Let it be cleanliness, or let it be environmental drive, or let it be the change in the mindset of the gender, or let it be health awareness. So for everything, Ferrari emphasized on using the native language. It says that if you change the language, you change the narrative. That means you are not, trying to convey the emotions of the local people. If you have changed the language, if you are making them learn in the other language, so they will be learning about the other, not about themselves. And this is very important. So Ferrari's concern and the kind of pedagogy he came up with, that is very important. And I think all of you are aware that that is how our government also has emphasized that we should be using translanguaging, where we should the teachers should try to learn the language of the local place, but if not, should always make a room for the learner to use their native language. Because it is with the multiple language usage, they are never know in which language the mind is constructing the thought, and the learner might like to express. There is a possibility the learner might try to think in the mother tongue and might respond in the medium of instruction which is other than the mother tongue. So that is how this translanguaging pedagogy is also becoming very popular these days, and a lot of research is going on. Now, coming to the digitalization of dialects, again, our computer science experts and with the help of humanities and social sciences experts, a lot of work is being done for the preservation by using the technology. Especially nowadays, a lot of work is being done on creating the online dictionaries, apps, and digital archives. One famous project is Endangered Language Project. So you can just go to UNESCO's website, and then you can see that what kind of project proposals can be submitted to that. One successful project was done in Kannada language, and digitization efforts were made. AI based transliteration app is used. I'll share this with you. You know, I, along with one of my scholars, went to Thailand, and we didn't know the language of the place. So, what we did was we used to use the Google Translator and the cab drivers, the people, in the showrooms and in the restaurants, they also knew how to use the Google Translator. So we could communicate easily. But if you see, in the process, the language of the local place was also preserved, which is very important. So this is how we can see that technology, if it is throwing so many challenges, it is creating so many problems, but at the same time, if we use it properly, it is really of a great help for us to preserve our you know uh, language and culture and history. So over 200 languages have been digitized by 2023 by CIL International. As I said, that you can go to UNESCO's website and you can see that. AI and machine learning, they can be very effectively used for preserving the dialects. Uh, I'm not a computer science person. I'm not an expert in AI and machine learning, but I can tell you that because I have read a few articles. So based on that, I can say that machine learning algorithms with multi-layer perceptrons. They can analyze and synthesize the dialects in a better way. In fact, the tonal variations also are, when you use the Google speaker, and you will see that the Google translator Totron, it can always, make out the finer variation in the tonality of the speaker, and can respond and then can write what does the speaker mean. So you can see that now it has become so sensitive, because uh, the program that is developed, that has been made sensitive to the change in the tone group of the speakers, or the tonal quality of the speaker. So that's wonderful. It's amazing, if we look at the way technology is forthcoming in solving our problems. There was a study in 2022. This was done at Stanford, on natural language processing. It showcased the dialect-specific databases for AI training. So you can see that how it's a it's a very vast area of natural language processing, and our computer science students, they majorly work on this, because this is the area, because you can look at the volume when you have 7,000 languages across the globe. So it's not even 20, even 10% is done so far. So lot of space is there where our scholars are, when our faculty members, they want to tap into the projects and all, they can always apply. So AI offers a lifeline to the fading voices. It really helps that humanity should be able to preserve its, but the need is to make an effort so that we can really see that. Um, yeah. So talking about the challenges in the dialect preservation, I would request you to float another poll.
Yes, ma'am. It has been floated.
Okay. What is one of the primary challenges in the preservation of the dialects? Lack of interest in learning new languages, limited vocabulary of dialects compared to global languages, intergenerational disconnect and urban migration, overuse of dialects in formal education. Let's see. Yes, Professor Ashish. Any responses?
Let me check, ma'am.
Yeah, please do that.
Yes, ma'am. One of the responses is lack of interest in learning new languages.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is intergenerational disconnect and urban migration.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, see, one thing, if you look at it, the kind of challenge, the major challenge, we were talking about, that is intergenerational disconnect and urban migration, because, this is something which is really posing a threat for our uh, cultural identity, which is posing a major threat when it comes to dialect preservation. So, could you float the question 3 as well? Do you think preserving dialects is important for sustainable community development? We
Yes,
know
ma'am.
that, okay, for cultural identity, it's important for sustainable community development. What do you say? We request all the participants to answer. So, the first option is yes, dialects preserve cultural heritage. No, global languages are more useful. Do you think so? Maybe, but only for academic purposes, we require our dialects. I'm not sure about the impact.
Ma'am, we are getting one response. Yes, dialects preserve cultural heritage.
Yes, of course. That's very important and it's absolutely
Another
right.
response is the same. Yes.
Okay, okay,
Yes. Another response A.
okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I think
One opinion is we should protect all cultures and languages of them.
uh, the person has written on it,
Yes.
on their
Yes.
own.
Yes. Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not from the options, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Anyways, no issues, no issues. But I'm very happy that our participants, they are really interactive.
Another
Thank you.
response is, ma'am, first.
Yeah, of course. The dialects preserve cultural heritage. Okay. Thank you so much. So you have made my job really easy if we look at it. So the challenges that are there in dialect preservation. Uh, Before we go ahead, I'll just tell you that a study was conducted in 2020. It revealed that 20% of our urban youth, they speak their ancestral dialects. So what about 80%? They do not speak their ancestral language or their dialects. So that means how far the dialect will survive. You can, there is an assessment. I think it is, that part of the video I have not played. It says that in next 15 days there will be death of one dialect. So the situation is really scary because for our jobs, for our growth, for societal recognition. We keep learning the dominant language. We emphasize that our children should learn the dominant language, and they do not really learn their own mother tongue or the dialect that which they speak. So with the death of the dialect, you will be losing on your culture, your knowledge, and the experience of the people that the knowledge, the language carries. We will not be able to tap it into that. So the point is that when we see that urbanization or intergenerational disconnect, because it's not passing on. When 20% is there, it is going to decrease day by day if we are not aware. If we are not going to make effort, if government is not going to make effort, if there is no recognition in the society for that, if we being the parents are not really recognizing that it's very important that our children should learn their mother tongue, so what will happen? Gradually it will meet its death. And it is said that language never dies its natural death. It's the speakers voluntarily not accepting their own language makes the language die. And it's very true. We need to see that somewhere we are instrumental in the death of our own dialect. And Crystal wants, he has perspective on this. He says that what we are heading to, when because of the globalization, all of us are trying to learn the dominant language. As a result of that, there is homogeneity in the when it comes to language, linguistic homogeneity. That is a concept that he uses. And now if it is there, that means those distinct flavors, that those distinct the cultural norms or the practices or the dances or music or songs or the linguistic nuances that existed. Because in your own language there will be a different kind of wit and humor that is used, that will be lost if you are learning the Hindi language and the or English language other than your mother tongue, and not really preserving your own mother tongue. So learn the dominant language, that is not a problem, but you have to preserve your own mother tongues as well. You have to really learn the national language, Hindi, as well. Now, so what are the successful stories? So that we, when we take up this as a project or when we want to do our research in this area, we should know certain a story of dialect revitalization which are successful. So in Wales, the Welsh Language Act was passed and it was introduced in the schools of Wales, and it was done in 1993. And now, according to the research paper that was written by David Corson, he says that in 1990s there were only 19% of the people they spoke Welsh language, but now 28% of the population there in Wales speak the Welsh language. So it's a very, inspiring story, and we should see that this is very much possible. Kannada, I told you. Thailand, for example, I gave you. For the Naxalbari movement, how the local dialect was used, that is also a successful story. So it is possible. We need to see how it can be used for educational purposes, for health purposes, for cleanliness, for social issues, for any kind of cultural identity issues, or for music and dance. It can be tapped. So educational integration of the dialects is also required. As I said that, we are moving towards inclusive pedagogy, and our NEP 2020 in our country is encouraging the regional use of regional languages, and textbooks are being created, and teachers are being trained for using the regional language when it comes to the classroom pedagogy. And there is a project, bilingual education project, which is taken up by different agencies. And humans have said that if you provide the bilingual or multilingual education to the children, they have better cognitive abilities. So it is said that a child, till the age of, I think, 8 to 10 years, if you teach them 7 to 8 languages, they have the ability to learn all 7, 8 languages. So, if you really want to make your children learn the mother tongue, so it should be done well in the early age. So some projects can be taken up in that area as well. So media and technology, you know uh, about the Maithili language, that was the my scholar, Dr. Shivangi Priya. She when she was carrying out the project, the research work, she could understand that, because Hindi is being extensively used in the newspapers, and in WhatsApp, and then also in the television. So in all the media and technology, it was Hindi that was being used. So conscious efforts were started being made by the government after its inclusion in the 8th schedule, and it was used in the newspapers, and there was a channel which was created for Maithili language, and that really encouraged the use of the Maithili language in the social and personal domain as well. And it is not the state language yet, but of course a lot of encouragement it got. So now you can see that, so im- she used the linguistic framework by UNESCO, live framework, and she found that the status of the language was in the bandwidth of 3 to 4. So it was not actually dying, but with the efforts, it moved from between 2 to 3 to, it moved to 3 to 4. So it really boosts the use of the mother tongue in the Maithili region. Similarly, you can see that how the Bhojpuri songs are there in the Bollywood, how Garhwali songs are there in Bollywood. And in fact, if you look at Punjabi, it may people may not be speaking that, but at the same time, because of the overuse of Punjabi words and Punjabi folk songs in the in the music industry, you find that it has got a lot of boosting when it comes to the cultural identity. And you have AI voice assistants. Now it can recognize at least 50 global dialects, so that's a very good sign. And there is another effort that has been made in terms of podcast, Awaz Aapki, for highlighting the different kinds of Hindi dialects. So you can always propose to come up with the podcast in the particular language on which you are working. So intergenerational transmission of the language also should be promoted, and it is Fishman, 1950s he gave this. And it is I think it was well before that also. Yeah, I'm not very sure, but it was early uh, 20th century. Fishman worked, and it is the seminal work that he has done. He stressed that there should be use of the home language, if you really want to survive and if you really want to thrive. And there should be community storytelling events and local radio shows that can be held, so that the legacy passes from one generation to the next generation. So intergenerational transmission is very much required. So when you are applying for a project also, you can, or maybe working on research, doctoral research, you can in fact you can cull out the community stories, and you can make an archive, and then you can propose how the local radio shows also can be held. Government policies, how our government is at the international level and at our Indian level, uh, at the national level it is being done. UNESCO, I told you that it is the major agency which is funding the projects. About 100 dialect preservation projects worldwide it has funded. And one successful story is, again, in Ireland policies were made for preserving the Gaelic language, and they are successful in doing that. And there is a scheme for protection and preservation of the endangered language, that is spell. This is the by our Ministry of Human Resource Development, and it is implemented by the Central Institute of Indian Languages, Mysore, where my scholar did a 1.5 months internship, and he worked on the preservation of his own language, Garhwali. So I can tell you that you can think of interning also at CIL, or maybe you can think of interning in UNESCO. In some part of the world, they might send you for working on the language project. So it focuses on documenting the endangered languages which are spoken by fewer than 10,000 people. We have at the national level, we have National Translation Mission, and NTM, which is done at the grassroots. It is being taken up at the grassroots level, and a lot of dialects are being preserved by translating their stories. Another effort that government makes is to include that in the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution. Already 22 scheduled languages are there. Those are receiving special recognition and funding for preservation and development of the language. We have another, agency which works on this, Tribal Research Institute and language promotion in the tribal areas. You can work with them, and in fact, there is tribal universities also. I went to Guwahati for attending a conference there in Assam, Guwahati, and there was a student who came to me, and she has presented the research proposal there in Tribal University of Nagaland. So you can see that even you can think of taking up some research work in this area. So they support for tribal dialects and language through educational resources. Translation works are taken up, cultural programs are held for this purpose, and digital initiatives are also taken up for language documentation. Yeah, so I'm well in time. So there's one project, that is Bhasha India, that is in collaboration with Microsoft, and in this partnership they are working on promoting the local language computing. So as I said that natural language processing, that is something which is really very broad and a vast area that you can always tap into. So those are the efforts that are being made. Now the question arises that, do we think that by preserving the language we can have the sustainable development through the dialects? Yes, of course, we can have sustainable development. All of us, have gone through the SDGs, and we know that, inclusivity is something which is being promoted. And, the UN particularly is keen on preserving the cultures. So if you look at the SDGs, SDG 4 and SDG 11, they are completely focus on inclusivity in education and preserving the cultural heritage. So if you look at the dialects, if you preserve that, you are always moving towards the sustainable development of your community or the community on which you are doing the work. There are livelihood programs using the tribal dialects in Chhattisgarh, India. Uh, you know, uh, I can tell you that there is livelihood studies are done in the forest tribal areas, that how it can be really taken up. And there is they also look at the role of the dialects whenever they propose in order to have the sustainable development in that tribal area. So you can see it's very well connected when it comes to the SDGs. So whenever you write a project or whenever you are thinking of writing some proposal, you can always consider the SDGs also in mind. So sustainability begins with the preserving what makes us human. And language is something which makes us human. Language is something which exerts our identity. Language is something which really helps us, having the trace of the history that we carry with us from since time immemorial. Because language tells us that now COVID-19, it is possible that we might not tell, but at the same time, whosoever is reading the history, or maybe whosoever is reading the reports, whosoever reads later on, they will get to know what happened to you, and what were the local truths about COVID-19. Similarly, there are several right now Ukraine Russia war is going on, Gaza, you can see that. So language, if the language is preserved, local truths come up. And you know uh, it will not be the borrowed truth, it will be the truth that the people lived. In fact, you get to know the lived experiences of the people. That's how language, any kind of linguistic study where you really want to talk about the sustainability, when you want to talk about the linguistic identity or cultural identity, you really need to live in that place, and you need to try to understand the local sensibility. So it will be ethnographic study when you take it up. Now, what is the future of the dialects in this
Tuesday, ma'am.
Hanji?
One of the participants here, I think, wants to ask something. Mr. Amarjit Bharti,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to ask anything? I think, ma'am, he has raised his hand unknowingly.
Okay. So can we take it up? I think I'm about to finish so that we can take up all the questions. Yes, Mr. Amarjit, will that be possible? Will that be fine with you?
Yes, ma'am, we may take.
Okay, fine. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Professor Ashish. Thank you very much. So we now coming to the last part of it. What is the future of dialects in this uh, AI age? So as I said that because speech synthesis is possible, there is dialectal corpus. Creating the dialectal corpus is also possible. Now, it's not that only computer science people can do that. Whosoever knows machine learning, or whosoever, even the humanities and social sciences people, I'm very sure they can really work on this area. Because you know uh, if computer science people, they have the technological knowledge, but the humanities and social sciences people know the behavior, people know the kind of sensibility, and the kind of you know the way the stories have to be narrated, that soft part of it uh, is with the social and social sciences and humanities people. That, so it could be a multi disciplinary kind of project, or maybe interdisciplinary kind of research work. So you can see that technology has to be tapped for our advantage when it comes to the preservation of the dialects. One major problem could be if we are giving the biased data to the AI tools. So though we cannot expect the right kind of output there. So you have to feed the enough data, the data which can really give us the right kind of results. It should not be skewed, or it should not be like a lopsided kind of data. So that the subjective bias if we have, naturally the AI cannot help us. So we need to really see that we should have the diverse data, and we should try to feed in as many possible solutions as possible. Now when you give something to chat GPT and it answers you, it satisfies you, you are able to understand that okay, a lot of data has been feeded when it comes to the particular field of work. Sometimes when we give some question to the chat GPT, it does not answer us correctly. We get to understand that something has gone wrong. Some wrong feeding is there when it comes to the references, or when it comes to the kind of the facts in a particular field. So you get to understand that there's something wrong. So AI can be used for our advantage, but if we do not use it judiciously, it might give us erroneous results, and that bias will affect. Now, one more research I would like to refer to towards the end. It is the research that is being done in MIT, that is for Open Voice project, and they are also working on the dialectal AI inclusivity. So you can just see that, and here is a small video. I'll try to play for you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I could not cut this, so you will have to bear with me, and this advertisement will also appear. Easy one. Ekale mushkil dag 100% tak. Naya Surf Excel. What would happen if French, German, Italian, and Japanese all disappeared? Some scientists believe that by the year 2100, a staggering 90% of the languages we know today might vanish into the echoes of history forever. And maybe you will end up being the last person on Earth who ever speaks your language. But why are our cherished languages dying? And why do some people say that artificial intelligence is the lifeline we desperately need to save our languages? Well, we dug through folders of reports to find out what's really going on, and in this video, we'll break it down in 3 parts to share why our languages are dying and which ones are at risk, how technologies like AI might help save our languages, and what you should start doing today to prepare for a future that will look and sound very differently to the world we live in now. But it all starts with the first part and understanding why our languages are disappearing. If you had to guess, how many languages do you think are at risk of going extinct? Well, as we speak, UNESCO estimates that nearly half of the world's 7,000 languages are endangered. That's right, half. Every 2 weeks, a minority language breathes its last breath and the final words are pronounced, never to be heard again. Languages like the native Yamana or Yagan of South America, a language spoken for over 1,000 years by indigenous communities in the Chilean region. But now, 93-year-old Cristina Calderon stands as perhaps the very last speaker in Chile. She used to speak Yagan with her sister Ursula until 2005, when her sister passed away, leaving Cristina with no one to communicate with that could truly speak the Yagan language. And while we were doing our research for this video, we found out that Cristina, the very last known speaker of the Yagan language, sadly passed away on February of 2022. The language is officially considered extinct, and the few written sources that remain today may be the first true tests of the capability of technology and AI to save and revive our languages that we'll see in just a few minutes.
I love the word Mamila Panatapai. It's from the Yagan language, which is now a dead language. I've never heard the word said properly, so I could be pronouncing it wrong. But the meaning is quite beautiful. It means that moment or feeling when 2 people both want to initiate something, but neither wants to be the one to start it.
But moving several miles away from Chile into Kenya's Rift Valley, we find another example with Yakunte, a language spoken by the Yaku tribe of the Maasai community in Africa. This language, too, is on its last breaths, dwindling to its very last speakers.
Urubata and Rubata.
There are fewer than 7 known people in the world who speak Yakunte, and all of them are over 70 years old. While some reports talk about ongoing efforts to preserve this language, others share that the Kenyan tribe is preparing for the death of its native tongue.
And the loss of our languages isn't just contained in South America and Africa alone. The Chong or Saok language in Thailand and Cambodia is dwindling to about 10 fluent speakers. The Bakanti language of the Aborigines in Australia is shrinking to roughly 20 people. And from the glacial mountains of Iceland to the vast landscapes in Europe, Asia, and here in the United States, we see the candles of many languages burning out. UNESCO maintains a list here where you can see just how many languages are falling into risk every day. Now, some people might say, why does it matter if some small, remote language with fewer than 50 speakers goes extinct? After all, thousands of languages have disappeared before, and it might even seem like it's just the nature of languages appear, evolve, and eventually fade out. But if we think about it,
language is much more than communication.
they're vessels of history, preservers of culture, and mirrors reflecting the stories and souls of communities that have roamed the earth for thousands of years. Through languages, especially some of the smallest and oldest languages like Yagan, we understand our ancestors' dreams, fears, and wisdom that continue to influence the way we shape the world today. After all, we humans beat out all of the other species in the jungle game of survival, partly because each generation could preserve its history, pass it down to the next, and ensure we grow and improve with each generation. So languages influence our cognitive abilities, creativity, and even our problem-solving skills. Lose a language and you wipe out hundreds or thousands of years of human history and evolution. But what's the reason for this linguistic decline? Well, there are many complex reasons, but to start, technology, globalization, and the allure of dominant languages. As popular languages like English and Chinese dominate the digital realm, many indigenous languages find little space for themselves in the increasingly interconnected world. In many of these cases, we see that the younger generations just aren't choosing to learn the languages of their parents and ancestors. They're instead choosing to learn more dominant languages in order to seek better economic opportunities and more closely integrate with the rest of the world. In the case of Yagan, Christina mentioned in interviews that the younger people in her town just weren't studying the native language because they were choosing to study languages they considered more modern, like Spanish. Learning a language for economic opportunity is a practical reason that I'm sure many of us can understand. But does this mean that in order for the next generation to advance economically, we have to watch the languages of our ancestors go extinct? Well, there may be a glimmer of hope on the horizon, and it all starts with this second part, which is artificial intelligence. While technology and globalization are often blamed for killing many languages, AI might ironically be one of our best shots at saving them. The question is, how? Well, before we can save a language, we need to understand it, break down all of its little intricacies like accents and idioms, and then record it. Traditionally, we've recorded languages in books and by directly teaching them to the next generation. But when we don't have the right people that are immediately willing and able to learn the language, this is where AI, especially natural language processing and storage, come into play. AI can quickly analyze text and speech samples at an unprecedented scale and save snapshots of languages for use in the future. Think of it as creating a big digital library of languages that are well recorded. And these libraries can live on for hundreds of years, and whenever we're ready, we can check a language out of the library to learn or use in decoding information. Essentially, it's humans kind of passing down languages to AI to store until the next generation of humans is ready to pick up those languages again. To illustrate how we might use these tools to save languages, consider a linguist named Isabella on a mission to record the last fluent speaker of an ancient language in the Amazon rainforest. With just a backpack of recording tools and an AI-powered transcription software, she goes into the remote village and sits with the elder. As he shares stories of his ancestors, tales of valor, love, and wisdom, all in his native tongue, Isabella's AI tool works to transcribe each word. For him, it's a trip down memory lane, but for Isabella, it's a treasure trove of linguistic data gold that will save a language and empower generations.
Yes. So you saw how Isabel is trying to create the linguistic trove. So now, summing up, so dialects, they are as a catalyst for change, and synthesis is very much possible. They bridge the tradition and the modernity that we have. If we try to save them, and we need to really take some action if we see that any of the dialects they are on the verge of extinction. We should work for integrated in education. So I think all of us agree by now that the death of a dialect is the death of a worldview. So we should see that we should preserve our dialects at every cost, and we should make an effort for that. Here are the recommended readings. You can go through them. Some of the works I have used here, and thank you very much. So hope I'm in time, and now I'm open for questions. Yes. I can stop sharing so that I can take up questions if there are any.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Please, ma'am. Ma'am, I have one message in chat box.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a beautiful and informative session, ma'am. I'm reminded of my friends who bewail on their language Garhwali in Uttarakhand and the Nishi and Galo tribal languages in Arunachal. They are
Thank you.
sad
Thank
that either English or Hindi have colonized their indigenous experiences of language
you.
and
Right.
life and their cultural identity.
Yeah.
Thank
Of
you for
course.
this session.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to really, do some kind of value addition so that, you can see what are the various ways you can really look at the dialects, an area where you can work, of course, but at the same time, if as human beings we look at it, it's in whatever way it's possible we should preserve our own languages, and we should help other indigenous communities to preserve their own. So this is how I wanted to
Ma'am, there are some more
yeah, please.
queries. Dr. Anubhav Tripathi, kindly ask your question.
Yes, please. You can unmute yourself and ask. That's not a problem. Or you can write your question in the chat box. I would be more than happy to
Dr.
answer.
Anubhav Tripathi, Dr. Shikha Agrawal.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Ma'am, my
Yes, sir, you're
question is.
audible.
Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Right.
Sir, you're
Yeah.
audible.
Okay. So, ma'am, actually,
Yes,
language
sir.
has so much variations. So, how can we face the challenges to means document it? Can you means say your point of view or challenges? Ma'am, your mic may be
Oh,
mute.
yeah, I'm sorry. Dr. Anubhav, thank you for such a wonderful question and a very pertinent question. You're right that we have so many varieties of language. Let it be Hindi or let it be Tamil or Kannada or any language for that matter. So, how are we going to really preserve them? So it's like this. Every language has so much of variety. They vary in terms of the grammar, vocabulary, and the syntax, or the sensibility. So what we need to do is we need to create the corpus, and uh, however, they might differ, but they carry some kind of uh, you know uh, s- some kind of heritage with them, and we cannot afford to lose them, because we know that some kind of indigenous knowledge is also lost when the dialect is lost. So this is how we need to create the corpus for different languages. We need to take the help of AI. We need to really try to promote the local dances, the folk songs, and the you know we can see how the language projects can be taken up, and there could be translation of the stories or the rhymes that are used in that particular dialect. So this is how it can be done. We have to do that at various levels. So this is what I think, when you want to preserve the different dialects of a language. Hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful session, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Yes. I think Dr. Amarjit Bharti. Yes, please unmute yourself and then ask the questions. Question, Dr. Amarjit or Dr. Shiksha Agrawal.
Shikha ma'am, you can raise a question, or you can people ask. They can type in the chat box.
Yeah, you can.
Ashish sir, unmute Shikha ma'am. Mic.
All the participants are already unmuted, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. Yeah, participants are also encouraged to
Okay, fine.
Hello, Push.
learning all of together. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening,
We
ma'am.
can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
In order
evening.
to preserve our mother tongue, or you can say regional language, what is your opinion if these kind of workshop, or maybe like non-technical workshop, should be in our native language or regional language? I think that will be more understandable by all.
Yeah, it's I think you have given a very good point. In fact, it has a lot of value, and it is the actionable point if you look at it, Javed ji. Because you see, we might speak English, or we might हम हिंदी भी बोल सकते हैं. Since this workshop is in English, so we are speaking in English. But certainly, when we will use our mother tongue, or maybe use the language of the local place, we will be able to preserve the language in a better way. And these kinds of workshops for that particular purpose should be done among those people, so that a better awareness can be created. They can think of preserving their stories, their rhymes, their dances, their music, their cultural heritage, by preserving the language. So your it is actionable tip that you have talked about. I think that is really good. I really appreciate this, Javed ji. Thank you so
Shukriya,
much.
ma'am. Shukriya, ma'am. Shukriya.
Yeah, well appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Dr. Ruchita from JCRC University, head of the department.
Thank you
Ma'am,
so much,
first and
Ruchita ji.
foremost,
First of all, being there, Ruchita ji, thank you so much. It's nice
ma'am,
meeting you over this
thank you so
platform.
much, ma'am. Ma'am, the first thing that I want to say is that in all these days, this is the first session that I've really, really enjoyed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was wonderful. Ma'am, there's a small point that I wanted to make was that when you said that, if you're, preserving our local dialects, we get the information firsthand. So, isn't this referring somehow to maybe the controversy that has been picked up recently related to the British people telling our history? I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
I mean, that period of independence struggle, it has been, recorded by the Britishers, and probably we do not have the right information because they were the ones to record it. If we had, depended on our local
Accounts.
dialect and their things, I think we would have got a better historical document for ourselves.
Dr. Ruchita, you are right when you are making this, you are articulating this perception of yours. I completely agree to that. And, that's the reason some of us really, because the kind of history we have read and the way, now things are coming up, we are also in a dilemma, what is right and what is wrong. But of course, you are very right. If we are able to trace some kind of local narratives, of the local places, I'm very sure, the history will also become, it will transpire through the lived experiences of those people. And I'm very sure, then the history would have been slightly different, because one major thing is that 1857, that was considered to be Gadar by the Britishers. But
Right, ma'am.
when you look at Indian historians, they always claim it as the first freedom
First
struggle.
war of
So,
independence. Yes,
uh,
ma'am.
who is setting the narrative? If the other is setting the narrative for us, they will never tell the truth from our side. They will just try
Absolutely.
to present the reality from their side. So that is the problem. And that is the reason, the governments these days, they are really concerned, and international bodies, they are concerned, and a lot of projects are happening. And another thing is, it's history is one part. Another thing is, when we lose our language, as Labov has said, or as David Crystal also has said, that some part of your cognitive ability also stops if you're not speaking your own language,
Absolutely.
because you can
Absolutely.
always resonate with the emotions of the other only when you are able to articulate or understand that in your own language, because there are certain
Absolutely,
things which
ma'am.
are very specific of you, which are really close to your heart, and which get clearer in your mind if you are, speaking your own language.
Own language. Absolutely, ma'am.
Yeah. So that
Thank you
is.
so much, ma'am. Thank you
Oh,
so
I
much
must
for a
thank
wonderful
you. I
session.
must thank you, Dr. Ruchita. It's so nice listening to you and meeting you.
Ma'am, it is entirely our pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll connect surely later on. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Same here. Yeah. Any other question?
We take up one more question, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I'm at your disposal, Kriti. Whatever you say, you are the boss here.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, please.
Afsal, I'm
Afzal.
basically
Yeah.
from Kerala, speaking
Okay.
Malayalam. I'm working in Hyderabad, dealing with Telugu and Hindi. But I want to talk about my friend Kabil, who is from Gadwali. I'm in Uttarakhand, and his family now is settled in Cochin, Kerala. I met him, and he, as I have already left in the message chat box, he bewails on the inability, due to his job and such things, he is not able to retain his language. I mean, the Gadwali, the regional language. And not only him, in one video he showed me, it's titled Fulari. Okay, Fulari is a season in Uttarakhand where children will carry lots of flowers to the doorsteps of the inhabitants there. And that was such a scenario previously. And now when children brings flowers there, there is nobody at their doorstep, because they have migrated to other parts of sometimes to other countries or other mainstream cities. And it's due to globalization, it's due to capitalization, and they have been uprooted from their indigenous culture. And likewise, that might also, what is your perspective about that, ma'am? They are being uprooted, and they want to preserve their culture, their indigenous language, but they are not able to.
Thank you so much, Afzalji. In fact, whatever we were talking about for past, 1 hour, 10 minutes or so, I think you have given a very live example that what do we lose when people are not able to preserve their language. So first of all, thank you so much for bringing this, you know, live to us, because it's the pain that the person really going through. And I'm very sure, it's not the physical pain, it's the pain of losing your heritage, not able to live those kinds of cultural experiences which they had in their own indigenous community. So that is there. So now, coming to what is the solution for it, I think that is what you want to ask me, Afzal.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So absolutely, here I think first thing is it has to be understood by the people that there should be an intergenerational transmission of the language. Another thing is so they should teach their children. Another thing is that they should make it a point that they should visit their own places quite often and try to celebrate uh, the cultural rituals and the festivals, and whatever way it is possible they should document it. It's not only just the soft copies are created, even the hard copies are also should be created, because that how many of us click the photos and then we forget about that, or sometimes it flashes and then you don't even like, but the moment there is an album, you always go through that very carefully, you spend some time on this, and you can always show it to others. So both physical as well as the soft copy of the whatever knowledge or the memories or the experiences that can be captured and preserved, that can really help the family to preserve their language and tradition, I believe.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Hope I have tried to answer your question in the
Yes,
best possible
ma'am.
way.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for being there, Afzalji. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this insightful session, ma'am. Really, we enjoyed. I mean, in chat box also,
Thank you.
everybody says thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
So
you.
many appreciation from and vote of thanks from various participants. They are enjoying. They are grateful. They are showing gratitude towards this
I don't have any
particular.
words. The way you have included me in this, on this. Anytime, any of you can approach me whenever you want to discuss, or you want to talk about the framework, or you want to talk about any kind of projects or research proposals. I'm always open. And I'm writing my email ID in the chat box. I think, yeah, here. Those who want to contact me can do that. And very soon we are going to have 10 days research methodology workshop here in BITS Pilani. So we will send you the information. You can be part of that as well.
Wonderful session, ma'am, and I hope that
Thank
if
you.
there are queries, we request the participant to mail us, or you can write to us. We can send it to ma'am. And Ashish, sir, can we have one group photograph?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
We
So all the
request all the
participants are requested to
participants to
turn on
switch
their
on their
cameras
camera,
so
so
that
we
we may
can
have
have
one
one
group
quick
photograph.
photograph. But, ma'am. And we can capture this moment, like.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
yes.
you so much. That will be great. I'll be happy to see all the participants there.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for your active involvement, active uh, enthusiasm. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, ma'am,
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you.
for accepting the invitation
ma'am, for
as well as.
joining us. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
So I can
Thank you so much,
disconnect.
ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah, sure,
Thank
ma'am.
you, Stella. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
See you, ma'am, again soon.
So, participants, I hope you enjoyed the session very well, session number 7. And Angshuman sir has joined, Ashish sir.
Ma'am, he is about to join.
Okay. So, we'll wait for 2 minutes time. I hope he'll join. Then we'll start with the session number 8.
Yeah, sure, yes. Yes, he is about to join, ma'am.
Okay.
It was really a very good session, Krati ma'am, Ashish sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you
Sonia,
so
ma'am,
much. Because,
for.
see, people of humanities love to hear all these things, right?
And she's
Ma'am,
such
not
a
only for
wonderful
not
speaker
only
and discuss
humanities,
so many
but
things in a
technical people
very
also
good
are
way.
enjoying.
Right, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And even Dinesh sir is also very happy when he's seeing so many participants are so active and regular, in the sessions. Even some hands are still raised. We want them to please kindly send their, queries. We can share it to ma'am on her WhatsApp number, and we'll share it to you
Exactly. Because
as
we are
well in the group.
restricted with the time, so here we can entertain few of
Sure.
the queries, not all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Right. So we are waiting for the next
Good
speaker,
evening.
right? Yes.
Angshuman sir has joined.
Good evening to all. मेरी आवाज आ
Nupur ma'am, you are
रही
there.
है?
Ma'am is already there. Yes, ma'am. You are visible and audible. आप
Okay,
दिख
ma'am.
भी रही हैं और सुनाई भी दे रही हैं. As soon as Anshuman sir
Perfect
will,
feedback.
Anshuman.
Dr. Angshuman Paul. He's just about
Has
to
he
join.
joined? Ashi sir? Yes,
Yes,
sir
yes,
has
yes, ma'am.
joined.
He is here.
Welcome, sir. I hope we are audible to you. Yes, sir has joined. So shall we
Welcome,
start
Angshuman sir.
with the permission of sir? I'll start. Yes, Anshuman sir. Shall
Yeah,
we start? Shall I? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, sir. And we are very happy that you have accepted our invitation and join us for this FDP. And we have just finished with our session number 7, and today it's our pleasure to hear you. I would like to invite Dr. Nupur Jain, Associate Professor in the Department of Chemistry at Poornima Institute of Engineering and Technology, to introduce and welcome our session expert. Nupur ma'am, please.
Very good evening to all, and I heartily welcome Dr. Angshuman Paul, sir. Dr. Angshuman Paul is an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, IIT Jodhpur. His primary research interests are in medical image analysis, machine learning, and computer vision. He earned his PhD from the Indian Statistical Institute, India. He has held a postdoctoral fellow position at the National Institute of Health, USA, 2019 to 2021. Dr. Paul is the recipient of the NIH Intramural Fellowship 2019 from the National Institute of Health, USA. At present, Dr. Paul is working on the problems of data efficient machine learning and federated learning for medical image analysis, lightweight CNN model for radiology diagnosis, class incremental learning, and self supervised learning. On the behalf of Poornima Institute of Engineering Technology, I heartily welcome as a speaker of this session. Now, mic is over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain, for the introduction. I thank everyone from the Poornima Institute for inviting me on this lecture. Good evening to everyone. So without further ado, I may probably start. I request all the participants to feel free to interrupt me wherever you have doubts. I hope I'm clearly audible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Audible, sir.
So if at any point I'm not audible, please let me know.
Sure, sir. Sure.
I hope you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. So I was actually told to talk about multi-layer perceptrons, a journey towards multi-layer perceptron. Uh, However, I thought that because we have a session of 1.5 hours, let us make this a bit more generic and talk about an introduction to deep learning. So, of course, multi-layer perceptron will come in due course, in fact, at the beginning, but it would be a general talk about deep learning, the basics of deep learning, and some of the very popular and very interesting areas of deep learning, including the convolutional neural network. So let us start our discussion. Before I go into the details, the materials that I have prepared, I have taken help of the two outstanding books. One is by Christopher Bishop, and the other one is by Ian Goodfellow and the others. Both of these books are outstanding books, and those who are interested in the area of deep learning, I highly recommend these books. You can study these two books, and there are quite a few outstanding online materials that you can look into. I have also provided the details here. Later on, if you want, I will share these details with all of you. So before we get into any of the details of deep learning, let us start with the question why? Why deep learning? So deep learning is probably the most successful machine learning approaches. And those who are familiar with machine learning, you know there are three primary paradigms of machine learning. One of them is supervised learning. The second one is unsupervised or weakly supervised learning. Although unsupervised and weakly supervised learning are different, but let's say if we club them together, unsupervised and weakly supervised, and the third one is reinforcement learning. And deep learning techniques are useful in all three paradigms of the machine learning. We have a lot of deep learning methods useful for each of these verticals of machine learning. And the other interesting part is in the classical machine learning approaches, we always need to extract features from the data, and then only we could use classical machine learning approaches like you might be familiar with logistic regression, support vector machine. This all requires a feature vector as an input. They cannot directly process the raw data. As a result of that, we lose a lot of information. But on the other hand, deep learning methods can handle different type of data. In fact, I should say that
Hello, Anshuman sir.
Anshuman sir, is you're not audible.
Yes, sir. Ma'am, there might be some internet connectivity issue.
I hope he has maybe he joined. Seema ma'am, please close your mic video.
I'm sorry, I think I lost my internet connection. I hope now I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible now.
Yes, sir, audible.
Okay. I hope my screen is visible as well. So we were talking about different types of machine learning approaches for different types of input data. If we have feature vector type of data, we have deep, fully connected neural networks. For images, we have CNN vision transformer. For audio, video, whatever data you want, we have suitable machine learning models for them. So that's a huge advantage, that without converting the raw data into different format and without the probability of losing information directly during that conversion process, I can use the raw data with different machine learning approaches. So this guy actually invented the first working neural network, and on the right side of your screen you can see the first working neural network, and the name of this neural network is Mark 1 Perceptron, right? And when it was discovered, of course it could solve certain type of problems. It could identify certain type of digits, it could do certain type of work, But many of the things could not be done with this neural network model. And as a result of that, the researchers at that time, I'm talking about 50s, researchers at that time did not believe that neural network is of any good, right? This person is Rosenblatt, who invented the first working neural network perceptron model, and but researchers failed to accept his contribution. So there was a long time where researchers did not believe that neural network can actually solve problems. And then from this point, there were a few who did not lose hope and kept the hope. Anybody knows the name of this person? Any idea who this person is? So here is a photograph from one conference of a particular person who did still believe that neural network can do outstanding work. And as a result of that, you can see the Nobel Prize of the Physics was awarded to these two persons, John Hoffield and Geoffrey Hinton. And in the previous picture, you had seen an example of Geoffrey Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize in physics for the contribution in neural network. And that is not just it. If you see the Nobel Prize in physics in 2024, Nobel Prize in chemistry in 2024, these three persons, David Baker and Hassabis and Jumper, they got the Nobel Prize in chemistry by the application of neural network for the discovery of the AlphaFold, which can give you protein structure prediction. So the contribution of neural network in current science, forget about computer science, in current science is enormous. And that's why we need to study neural network. I think this is a fair enough motivation why we need to know neural networks. And this is, by the way, the ceremony of Nobel Prize where Geoffrey Hinton was awarded. And if you look at the success stories of the neural network, it's enormous. You see, on this particular news, with the help of AI techniques, specifically neural networks, the researchers could identify a new class of antibiotic. You see, this has no connection with computer science at all, right? It's a completely in the domain of medicine where the researchers used neural network and found out new antibiotics, right? If you look at this news at the bottom of this Nature title, you see artificial chemist. It's a large language model who can perform chemical experiments, right? It's a large language model where you give a prompt that synthesizes paracetamol, for example. It will automate the entire, process in the laboratory. It will analyze your prompt, automate the process in the laboratory, and automatically synthesize paracetamol. And that has actually happened. To this extent, neural network has facilitated the progress of science. And that's why we need to study the neural network. And every one of you know ChatGPT and other language tools, which has been our companion in our day-to-day life these days. All are contributions of neural network. And on the right side of the screen, you can see the 2 cents from our side, where we have taken a very low resolution X-ray image. And from that, we have been able to generate a way more high resolution X-ray image with the help of certain type of neural network. So the impact of neural network in modern science, modern art, and so we need to study neural network. And as I said, neural networks are deep learning models, or the neural networks are useful for different types of tasks, including classification, regression, segmentation, detection, and most importantly, generating new data. Generating new type of data is the key ingredient of the current scientific revolution, right? And you name the task, and we have a neural network for you. So that's why this is important. But it's not just the success story. We have several challenges in the domain of the neural network, but like the explainability. We know neural network perform well, but always we don't know why it performs so well. Generalizability is another problem, where neural network tends to perform very well on certain type of task and does not perform equally well on similar tasks from other type of data. Then neural networks also have, deep learning models also have high computational requirement, which makes it difficult to be useful in low-end computing resources. And another thing is the data requirement. Typically, most of the deep learning approaches require large amount of annotated data, which makes it difficult to train if you do not have such a huge annotated data. But one question that remains, why the neural network revolution is happening now, although it was at least 80 years old idea. The revolution is happening because of several reasons. First of all, we have outstanding hardware resources these days. For example, GPUs. You have GPUs. Earlier, we used to call it graphic card, which were used for various purposes, including gaming. Right now, those GPUs are actually bringing in huge advantage in the neural network domain for parallel processing. And then we have easily available storage, including the cloud services, which makes like the various cloud services, including Google Colab and cloud storage, which gives you GPU resources in cloud, storage in cloud, and that makes your life much easier in terms of doing experiments with neural network. And we have large data sets available also. We have free of cost platform like PyTorch, TensorFlow, which makes our life much easier in terms of coding the neural network. All these things together are the ingredients for this revolution of with the neural network. So let us come to the technical details about the neural networks. So neural networks consist of several layers, right? And the circles that you can see here, each of them are termed as neuron. You can see each neuron is collecting input from the neurons of the previous layer and producing an output which is going to the neurons of the next layer. This is, by the way, called a fully connected neural network, which consists of several layers of neuron. The first layer where the input is taken, this is called the input layer. The last layer from where we get the output is called an output layer, and any intermediate layer is called a hidden layer, right? So every layer consists of several neurons which takes inputs from all the neurons of the previous layer and then processes them, produces an output which goes to the neurons of the next layer. This is how the information propagates from the input layer to the output layer through the several layers of the neural network. This is called a fully connected neural network. And this idea of neuron is highly motivated from the biological neuron, which makes our nervous system. A biological neuron consists of a cell body, which has a nucleus, and then there are several axons. This is called an axon, and there are several dendrons and dendrites, right? So these dendrites are responsible for collecting responses or signals from the previous nerve cell, and then the signals comes to the cell body, some processing happens there, and the signal propagates through the axon to the next set of neurons. In a very similar way, the neurons in the neural networks work. We have a very similar approach, as you can see here. This is like a cell body which collects the data from the previous neuron, through the dendrites, and then processes the data, produces the output, which propagates to the next layer neuron. Now, let us see what happens inside a neuron. A neuron is basically nothing but a summing unit, an unit that performs addition. Suppose I have an input x1, another input x2, another input x3. This neuron will basically perform a weighted summation, as simple as that. So the output of this neural network, output of this neuron y equal to w1x1, w2x2 plus w3x3, where w1, w2 and w3 are called weights, right? So this is nothing but a weighted summation of the input that the neuron produces. And as you can see, if you consider these weights to be constant, the relationship between the output and the inputs x1, x2, and x3 are linear. So this neuron inherently is a linear summing unit which performs weighted addition. Now, if I consider that these two, through these two input lines, I have two inputs x1 and x2, and through the third input line, I have a constant input which is equal to 1, then the output of the neural network is w1x1 plus w2x2 plus w3. Now, in the neural network terminology, these two terms, w1 and w2, are called weights, and the constant term w3, which is multiplied with the constant input 1, this term is called a bias. Bias is a constant term that is added with the weighted sum of the inputs. So sometimes we represent the bias by the term B, and these W1, W2 are called weights. By the way, a neuron technically can have any number of inputs. I have shown only 2 inputs and 1 bias term. Typically, neurons have got only 1 bias term, and it can have multiple inputs. I have shown 2 inputs. There could be 10 inputs, 200 inputs, anything. So in the matrix form, I can write this entire expression as capital W transpose X plus B, where capital W is W1, W2, and X is X1, X2. So this is a linear operation as we have discussed earlier. Now, the task in the machine learning with the neural network or deep learning, the task of deep learning is to learn the weights and the biases. That's it. The learning of the neural network basically tries to learn the weights and the biases. That is, I want to learn, for this particular example, I want to learn the value of W1, W2, and B with the help of my training data. So suppose I have many training data collected from a group of samples, right? Let us consider the first sample to be X1, which has got 2 features, X11 and X21. Let us say I am interested in classifying a set of animals into the 2 categories, let's say dog and elephant. Okay, so for every animal, I have collected 2 pieces of information. One is the height and the other is the weight. So X subscript 1 indicates height and X subscript 2 indicates weight. So the first sample, it could be a dog, could be an elephant, is represented by X inside bracket 1. So X11 is the height for the first sample, X21 is the weight for the first sample. With those 2 values, I predict the class of the input sample, which is given by y1. Y1 is the predicted value or the predicted class level for the first sample. Similarly, I have the second sample x2, for which the input are x12 and x22, and the predicted output value is y2, right, which is given by this equation. Similarly, if I have n number of inputs, for the nth data, I have the output given by yn, which is equal to this. Right? So, if I have n number of input samples, as we have argued already, the input is represented, for the first sample, the input is represented by x inside bracket 1, then x inside bracket 2 up to xn, right? And because for each data I am collecting 2 pieces of information, x11 and x21 are the pieces of information for the first sample, x12, x22 are the pieces of information for the second sample, and so on. So with the help of these samples, I predict some output values. Assume that my actual observation for each of the input, assume that I know whether that sample belongs to a dog class or an elephant class. And those actual observation about dog or elephant are given by this y01, y02, etc. y01 is the actual value for the first sample, y02 is the actual value for the second sample, and so on. When I pass this input to the neural network, when I pass the x to the neural network predicts an output which is equal to y, right? For the first sample, the predicted output is y1. For the second sample, the predicted output is y2, and so on. Ideally, okay, so the y can be also represented as this, because the output and the input are related by this formula. So the first output y1 is equal to this, w1 x11, w2 x21 plus b. Similarly, second output and third output and another output. Now, ideally, as I said, I want to find out W1, W2, and B, right? Analytically, can I find these values? The answer is yes. So, how can I find these values? The idea is I want the predicted values by the neural network to be similar to the observed value that I want, right? So, this observed value are the actual value, and this y is the predicted value. I want the neural network to predict close to the actual value of the output, right? So ideally, I want y to be close to yo. try to minimize y minus yo whole square, then it enforces that my predicted output is close to the actual observed output. And by the process of minimizing this term, I may be able to find out the value of W1 and W2 and B analytically. How can I find it? So for minimizing this term, if I write this term as an expression of W1 x11, W2 x21 and so on, and then subtract the value of yo1, yo2 and square them and take the derivative of that, because I want to minimize this difference, the derivative of this difference should be equal to 0. So by taking the derivative of that and equating it to 0, I will get a set of equations. And if I solve it, I can find out the value of W1, W2, and B, right? And this is called an analytical approach of finding out the values of W1, W2, and B. If my neuron is linear, I can possibly find out the values of the weights and biases using this analytical approach. So what can this neural network do? This linear neural network, suppose I have plotted a set of data like this. I have calculated the heights and the weight for a group of animals containing dog and elephant and plotted them here in the two-dimensional plot. X1 is height, X2 is weight, and I want to classify these two sets of animals. So I need to draw a straight line. It can, on one side of the straight line there is elephant, and on another side of the straight line there is dog. If the data can be separated with the help of a straight line or with the help of a hyperplane, then this data is called a linearly separable data. So if I have any kind of linearly separable data, I can use the neural network that I have talked about. I can use those type of neurons and a neural network made of those type of neurons to do this classification if I have a linearly separable data, right? And in these cases, when I go for classification, I typically denote each of the class using a class number. For example, I can denote elephant with the class number 1, dog with the class number 2, right? And I can also do something called one-hot encoding to represent the class. Class number 1 can be represented by 1, 0. Class number 2 can be represented by 0, 1. Similarly, if I have a 3-class classification problem, class number 1 can be represented as 1, 0, 0. Class number 2 can be represented as 0, 1, 0. And the class number 3 can be represented as 0, 0, 1. So you can see that in the one-hot, this is called one-hot encoding. And you can see that in one-hot encoding, every class is represented with a unique number consisting of 1, 1 and rest zeros, right? For example, I have 1, 0 here, 1, 1 and rest are 0. So one-hot encoding can be used for any number of classes. And this makes our life a bit easier because at each dimension, this is a one-hot encoding of dimension 2 because I have 2 entries at every one-hot encoding. That every position, I can have either 1 or 0. This makes a binary decision-making problem at every dimension of the one-hot encoding. So this neural network, as I said, I can have multiple outputs from the neural network as well. From the input data, I can predict 2 output values. Let's say, for example, y1 given by alpha 1 x1 plus alpha 2 x2 plus alpha 3. Alpha 1, alpha 2 and alpha 3 are complex combination of the weights and the biases, right? If I just write every weight and every bias and represent the output of the neuron at every layer, I will get an equation of y1 in terms of x1, x2 and some other weight bias terms. Those weight bias terms combined are written as alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, etc. Essentially, what I am trying to emphasize is that the output of the neural network is a linear combination of the input values x1 and x2, right? Now, as I said, in one-hot encoding, I want the output values to be either 1 or 0, right? but there is no guarantee that the value of y1 would be 1 or 0. It could be some real number as well, right? Because alpha 1, depending on the value of the weights and the biases, alpha 1 can take is alpha 2, alpha 3, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. X1 and X2 can have any value. So Y1 and Y2 can be any real number, right? So for one hot encoding, as I said, I need 1 or 0 values. That is not possible just by using these equations. So after we obtain the output, we perform an operation which is called a softmax operation. You see, corresponding to the output Y1, I get a softmax value O1 equal to exponential of Y1 divided by exponential of Y1 plus exponential of Y2. Similarly, for output Y2, I can get a corresponding softmax value O2 equal to exponential of Y2 divided by exponential of Y1 plus exponential of Y2. You see, when I perform this operation, I get a value between 0 and 1, right? So depending on that particular value, if the value is closer to, if the value of OI is closer to 1, I can make that value equal to 1. If it is closer to 0, I can make that value equal to 0. So after the softmax operation, I can take a decision what should be the value of the output, 1 or 0. So in this way, by using the softmax operation, I can also get the one hot encoded output from the neural network. Okay, any questions up to this point?
Any questions from participants? So it seems like there are no questions at this moment.
Okay, so let's move to the second part. We have so far talked about the linear neurons, linear neural network, but life may not be so simple. Suppose I have a classification problem where I have one class of data in red like this in triangle and another class of data in blue circles like this. So can you linearly separate these two data? The answer is no. But probably with a circle, you can separate these two data. Everything inside the circle is the blue class. Everything outside the circle is the red class. So all the decision-making problems in the real life, actually most of them are non-linear problems. But the neural network that we have learned so far is a linear neural network. So in order to tackle this kind of problem, we need to bring in the idea of non-linearity in the neural network. So what we do is, basically, suppose I have these inputs in the neural network, I get the output after the linear sum, and then I apply this linear sum through a non-linear function, right? So G is a non-linear function which takes this linear combination ys and creates a non-linear output y hat with respect to the input data x1 and x2. And this non-linear function G is called an activation function of the neural network. So the role of the activation function in case of neural network is to make the output non-linearly dependent on the input. And there are quite a few. Yes.
Sir, maybe elaborate a little bit about this y hat, as our audience is from diverse background. So
which one?
This y hat.
Y hat is the output from the nonlinear function G. G is a nonlinear function which is applied on ys to get the output y hat. So y hat is a nonlinear function of the input data. For example, I can say G equal to, let's say ys square. If I say G equal to ys square, GYS equal to ys square. If I write like this, then it's a nonlinear, G is a nonlinear function of ys, which makes the output, so y hat is equal to G of ys, which is ys square. So y hat is non-linearly dependent on ys. Ys is again the function of input x1 and x2. So this is a nonlinear function, right? And this function is called an activation function.
Thank you, sir. And we have one more query. That
Yeah,
is
sure.
it necessary? Is it necessary encoder had to label inputs into binary pairs? How linear and non-linear in neural network cannot be without binary labeled?
Yeah, so technically neural network can learn without binary levels. So neural network can run without one hot encoding, but that makes a lot of difficulty. Suppose I am interested in classifying, I am interested in performing a 10 class classification, okay, where I have not done one hot encoding, and I have named the class levels with values class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 10 in that way, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10, right? And suppose because of my neurons, I get an output equal to 300. Now, what should I decide from that? Which class my input data belongs to? It is close to none of the classes, right? It is probably closer to the class 10 compared to class 9, but does it really make sense, right? I mean, the closeness, the proximity is really negligible compared to the actual. So if I just go by the absolute value of the output and do not do one hot encoding, then I may run into the problem of non-decisive outputs, where I will have difficulty in deciding which class I need to assign to. But in the context of regression problem, if I do not consider classification, if I go for regression problem, I can run the neural network, train the neural network with the actual value of the output, real numbered value of the output. There I do not need to do any kind of one hot encoding. As a matter of fact, there one hot encoding is not possible, right? We need to go with the real value of the output. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the explanation. I think Jayashree ma'am has understood about it.
Okay. Right. So as I said, there are many activation functions. One of them, very popular one, is called a sigmoid activation function. It's a nonlinear function of input. If my input is ys, then the output is 1 divided by 1 minus 1 plus exponential of minus ys. I mean, I have just represented this as x. In place of that, you can put ys. So this could be one type of activation function, and the derivative of the sigmoid function is also a function of the sigmoid, which makes our life a bit easier when we talk about the next part, backpropagation. We'll see the advantage of this. We have other activation functions. You can try to find out the value of f sigmoid, by the way. We have another activation function called tan hyperbolic, which is given by this equation. I'm pretty sure you are all familiar with the tan hyperbolic function. This can also act as an activation function. Another function that can act as an activation function, and in fact a very popular one, is called ReLU function, rectified linear unit, which is equal to, if the input is x, the output of this activation function is equal to x when the value of x is greater than 0, and it is equal to 0 when the value of x is less than 0. So you can see these particular function, this has got a bit of non-differentiability at x equal to 0, and that creates certain type of challenges in the context of neural network. But by engineering approximation, we solve those challenges, and this has become one of the most popularly used activation functions in most of the neural networks. Similarly, we have a function called leaky ReLU, which has got the output equal to x when the value of x is positive, and when the value of x is negative, the output is equal to mx, where m is a small number. So this has also got non-differentiability at x equal to 0. Now, how to measure the performance of the neural network? What do I want the neural network to do? I want the neural network to produce an output which is close to my observed value, right? So if I calculate a difference between the predicted value by the neural network and the actual value that should have been produced by the neural network, if I let us call that observation. So if I calculate the difference between observation and the predicted value, I want that difference to be as minimum as possible. And this particular terminology, the difference between the observed value and the predicted value by the neural network, is called a loss. Now, there are many different types of loss. The first one is called mean squared error, which is nothing but the difference between the predicted value yi and the observed value yoi corresponding to the ith input data, square them, sum them up, and divide it by the total number of training data. If I have total number of training data equal to n, that I represent by total number of observations, so 1 by n and summation this is called the mean squared error, right? I want to minimize this mean squared error to have a good neural network. But mean squared error is highly affected by something called outlier. If you see, if this should have been the actual, if the black line indicates the actual value or the observed value, and the blue triangles shows the predicted value of the by the neural network, you can see that the predicted values are pretty close to the actual value. So I will have a low mean squared error. Now, if I get to see this kind of output by the neural network, where most of the output are very close to the actual observed value, but there are a few outputs of the neural network which are very far away from the actual value, then because of only these two outputs, the overall mean squared error will be increasing, right? So although the neural network really does a good job because it has predicted almost all the values very accurately, but even for 1-2 incorrect predictions, the performance of the overall neural network will be treated as a bad performance, right? So it's a misleading. So in this case, the mean squared error is a misleading measure of the performance of the neural network. And that's why we say, and these particular predictions where we did a really poor job with the neural network, these are called outliers because these are lying far away from all the other predicted values. So we say that the mean squared error, this loss, is highly sensitive to the outliers. Right? Similarly, there is another type of loss function which is called mean absolute error. The mean absolute error is nothing but the absolute value of the difference between the predicted value yi and the observed value yoi, and sum them up, divided by the total number of observation, you get the mean absolute error. You see that the mean absolute error also measures some sort of difference between the predicted value and the actual observation. And this is also kind of affected by outliers, but not to the extent that mean squared error is affected. There is another problem. This is an absolute value operation, right? So it's like y equal to mod x type of operation, and y equal to mod x is not differentiable at x equal to 0, and that creates a problem, as we'll see a little later, and we have engineering approximations to solve that. Now for classification, so mean squared error and mean absolute error, these losses are typically used for problems of regression where I need to predict a value from some input features. For example, given the height and weight of a person, we need to predict the heart rate, something like that. It may not make sense biologically, so don't take this example too seriously. Just I'm giving an example that from the height and weight, can you predict the heart rate of that person? So those are called regression problems. And for classification problem, we have something called a cross entropy loss, which is a very popular loss again. This cross entropy loss, if the observed class levels are YO1 and YO2 in the one hot encoded format, and the predicted probability is equal to Y1, Y2, then the cross entropy loss is given by sum of YOI log of YI. This basically tells that when the predicted value and the predicted one hot encoding matches with the predicted probability of the data matches with the actual one hot encoding of the class level observed value, then the loss is low. Otherwise, if there is a mismatch, the loss becomes higher. So basically, if you see the mean squared error or cross entropy loss, mean absolute error, all these losses are function of the output produced by the neural network, right? And the output of the neural network is a function of the weights and the biases that we have, right? So we can say that loss is a function of the output and the output is a function of the weights and biases of the neural network. So using this transitivity property, we can say that loss is a function of the weights and biases of the neural network. These weights and biases are called the parameters of the neural network. Now, the goal of neural network training is to find a set of weights and biases so that the loss of the neural network, whatever loss we calculate, whatever loss we try to optimize, that particular loss minimizes. So we want to find out a set of weights and biases so that the loss minimizes. This mathematical expression basically tells us that I want to find out a set of weight and biases W so that the loss LW is minimized. And how to minimize that loss? If I assume that my neural network has got only two parameters, W0 and W1, with respect to these parameters, I plot the loss. For example, the plot of the loss looks like this, right? So I want to get to the minima of this plot, right? I can start from any point, any arbitrary point randomly, let's say, and then I want to find out a value of W0 and W1 so that I get to the minima of this particular plot of the loss. That's my sole target of neural network training. So the question is how to reach the global minima. Let us take a simple example. Suppose I have only one parameter in my neural network, which is W, and the loss is given by LW, right? And I start at any random position, say here, at the position of this smiley. And I want to reach to the global minima, which visually you can observe right here. Okay. So how do I get to the global minima? Which direction should I move? The answer is obvious. I should move to the right direction, right? So I should move to the right direction. But my question is, how do you know that I have to move to the right direction? How do we know that? So if you think carefully how we know that I have to move to the right direction, I know that because by moving to the right direction, the value of the loss actually decreases. But if I move to the left side, the value of the loss increases. I want to get to the minima of the loss. That's why I want to move to a direction where the value of the loss decreases, and that is why I am moving to right. Now, if I move to right, the value of the loss decreases, but the value of W, the parameter value, increases. So if I calculate a derivative del L del W, del L becomes negative and del W becomes positive. As a result, del L del W is less than 0, right? So if to move to the right side, if I use an update equation for W, like W equal to W minus eta into del L del W, what happens then? Assume eta is a positive constant. You see, del L del W is negative. So eta del L del W is also negative. Negative multiplied with this negative becomes positive. So this entire term becomes positive, and that term is added to W. That means the value of W increases and I move to the right direction. So if I use this equation to update the value of the W, the updated value of W will take me towards the direction of the minima. I hope all of us agree with this statement. If anybody has doubt, please let me know. Now, similarly, consider a second position. Suppose I randomly start from here. Tell me which direction we should move to get to the minima. The answer is obvious. I should move towards the left direction. Why? Because by moving to the left direction, the value of L decreases. Now, when I move to the left direction, the value of L decreases and the value of W also decreases. So del L is negative, del W is also negative. So del L del W is greater than 0 when I move to the left. Okay. So if I again use this equation, W equal to W minus eta into del L del W. Del L del W is positive, eta is a positive constant, so this entire term is positive, which is subtracted from W. That means I am moving towards the left direction. Subtraction of W reduces the value of W, so I move towards the left direction. That means I move towards the direction of the minima. So irrespective of my position, if I use this equation to update the value of W, that updated value of W will take me closer to the minima. I hope that is clear to everybody. If I use this update equation, the updated value of W will always take me closer to the minima. I think somebody has a question. Let me see.
Yes, sir.
Do we have to be in predicted level rather to stick to regressive state to get best possible creatives instead to remain with existing observed one? I'm not sure if I understood the question clearly. In predicted level rather to stick to regressive state. I have not been able to answer the question. You can please unmute yourself and let me know what your question is. Jayashree, can you unmute and let me know the question, or you can ask me the question?
Jayashree ma'am, would you please ask the same question? Sir is not able to understand the query.
Please unmute yourself. You are muted.
Yeah, sir, it's quite difficult even to bring into speech my normal, ordinary, expression regarding this mathematical, computational, whatever the data you are presenting us. But for example, we are from humanities. And suppose if we are understanding this whole data, what you intend to say that in digital humanities, we generally, when we explore existing data means observed data. Whenever we explore existing or observed data, we try to extract the best, but we try to move forward, that is towards right, so that we can be more we can be more interpretive, analytical, and more creative also, uh, in bringing out our whatever thought process is a data. Like for example, in thesis, when we say that these are the poetic lines, now the poetic lines are the observed data, existing data, already in text. But when we interpret in our own words, and uh, uh, we explore other writers also on the same poetic lines expressing the same, that means we are collecting existing observed data and moving right instead of going into left side. We don't want to, because generally it is said that ROL, or review of literature, is on the existing observed data. And if we have to predict, we have to be more interpretive, critically analytical. So here means, suppose if I'm a literary person and explaining this deep learning methodology, I have to explain in a certain way that how our computational context works. We all get from Wikipedia a lot of notes, observed data is already there, but how that Wikipedia actually calculate the observers or the viewers data, and then later on it keep on modifying that Wikipedia data. It adds more and more references into it as per the viewers and the observers connectivity to that Wikipedia content or whatever the Google Scholar content. Basically,
Okay.
means when computational softmax works in this direction, but as
So
normal layman, we work in this way.
I'm interrupting you in the interest of time. I will just tell you, if I understood your question correctly, don't take these example in the literary sense. This is a crude mathematical idea which has nothing to do with the literary sense that you are you are trying to ask the question from. This is a
Yeah.
pure mathematical expression which tells us how to get to the minimum. And this is irrespective of neural network. This is called an optimization approach and can be useful for different type of machine learning techniques. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are right. Absolutely right, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, so what I wanted to convey essentially is, if I use this update equation for W, I will always move towards the minima, but there is no guarantee that I will move towards the local minima. So this is basically an update equation to update the value of the parameters of the neural network. And this particular approach is called the gradient descent approach. And what the gradient descent algorithm tells us is that you initialize the parameter of the neural network randomly, and then you compute the gradient, and then you use this update equation to update the value of the parameter, and that will take you closer to the minima. But there is no guarantee that this will take you towards the global minima. If you are right, if you are starting from here, this update equation will take you towards the local minima, and then you have different ways to get out of this local minima. But eventually, this update equation will take you towards one of the minimas. Now, this is the backpropagation algorithm which tells us how to update the weights and the biases of the neural network, or the parameters of the neural network. Suppose for the simple neural network, I have a loss calculated as L, right? And when I want to update the weight W5, I will use this equation W5 equal to W5 minus eta into del L del W5. That is, I will calculate the derivative of the loss with respect to W5 and update the parameter W5 using this equation. Similarly, I can update the parameter W6. Similarly, I can update the parameter W1. But you see that the loss function L is directly dependent on W5 and W6, but loss function L is not directly dependent on W1. So directly calculating del L del W1 is not possible. That's why we use a chain rule of equation, chain rule of differentiation, which tells us that I can calculate the value of del L del W1 in the form del L del Y, then del Y del Z1, and then del Z1 del W1. This is how I can update the parameters W1 of the neural network. This is called chain rule of differential equation. Similarly, I can apply this for all the other parameters of the neural network, and I can update all the parameters. As you can see, that when I apply this chain rule, it looks like I take the derivative of del L del Y, the loss is being propagated from here to here, and then del Y del Z1, it is propagating from here to here, and then del Z1 del W1, it is propagating from here to here. So because I use this chain rule, it looks like the gradient is propagating from the last layer of the neural network towards the first layer of the neural network, or wherever I'm trying to calculate the differential for. And that's why this particular strategy is called back propagation, right? In neural network, actually, the information propagates in the forward direction. I'm sorry. Actually, the neural information propagates in the forward direction. However, when I calculate the derivative, the information propagates at the backward direction. So this particular strategy is called back propagation, right? So you see that in order to calculate this derivative, my loss function has to be differentiable. Otherwise, I will not be able to calculate del L del Y. That's why I told that any loss function that you want to use has to be differentiable. Now, mean absolute error is not a differentiable loss. There, I need to do some sort of engineering approximation. Similarly, del Y del Z1 has to exist. Now, Y is the result of linear summation followed by activation. Now, if my activation function is not differentiable, then del y, del z1 cannot be calculated. So my activation function also has to be differentiable. But certain type of activation functions like the ReLU are not differentiable at certain points. There also I need to do engineering approximation. That's why every component that is somewhat responsible for producing the output of the neural network has to be differentiable, right? So there are certain problems in optimizing the loss. I told you I can start from some point and then based on the gradient I can reach towards the minima. It is not as simple always, because at certain points, in certain cases, we get into problems like local minima, saddle points, and vanishing gradients. In the interest of time, right now I cannot describe all of these in details, but probably if you are interested to know, I can suggest you certain materials to understand this better. In fact, the books that I suggested discusses these things at length. Now there is a very important problem which is called a vanishing gradient problem. I just want to highlight that. So when I am trying to update the parameter w1, I showed you the equation that I am multiplying del L, del Z1 and del Z1, del W1. If each of these differential values, del L, del Z1 and del Z1, del W1 is very, very small, this entire term, eta into this term, becomes even smaller, right? So effectively, the value of W1 does not get updated. And this is called vanishing gradient problem. So if I have a very deep neural network where I have so many differential values to be calculated, then the product of them can become vanishingly small in certain context. If each of the differential terms are very, very small, then the product will become even smaller and close to zero. And effectively, the weight Wn will not get updated. And this is called a vanishing gradient problem. Similarly, I do have an exploding gradient problem. If each of these differential values are greater than 1, substantially greater than 1, then this overall product will become very, very large, and the change in the parameter value will be significant, as a result of which I can miss the minima, I can jump the minima, I can overshoot the minima, and I might not be able to find out the minima very easily. And this is called an exploding gradient problem. So I have an example of back propagation. This is step-by-step example. I'm skipping this in the interest of time because I need to talk about a very interesting topic which is called convolutional neural network. Just before that, I want to tell you one thing. Why are we so much bothered about neural networks? What is so special about neural network? The neural network has got something very special, which is universal approximation theorem, which tells us that a neural network, even with a single layer, can approximate any function, right? Then why do we talk about deep networks? This universal approximation theorem roughly tells that even with a single layer, I can ask the neural network, I can expect the neural network to perform arbitrarily well. But in that case, we might require a very wide neural network with too many nodes, which might be difficult to handle. To skip that requirement, we go for deeper neural network with each layer of the neural network having a reasonable size, right? So the formal statement of universal approximation theorem is this: a feed-forward network with a linear output layer and at least one hidden layer with any squashing activation function can approximate any Borel measurable function from one finite dimensional space to another with any desired non-zero amount of error, provided that the network is given enough hidden units. Right. So universal approximation theorem basically states that a neural network with a single layer can approximate any function, can give us any kind of separable boundaries. So that's why neural network can be so useful in a wide variety of problems, right? So quickly, we will go to the convolutional neural network. I told you that the neural network can be useful for a wide variety of application, including the image type of input, right? So as you know, an image is an array of pixels, right? If I have a color image, I have three such arrays of pixels. One of them is called red channel, the second one is called green channel, the third one is called blue channel, right? So if I have a normal image and if I want to use a neural network to predict something from this image, the problem is I have to I cannot directly apply this image to the neural network because I have to convert this image into a vector, and I have to take these image pixels and stack them like this, and I have to create a vector which is applied to the neural network, and this causes loss in the spatial correlation. For example, this pixel 138 is a neighbor to these three pixels 182, 153, and 79. But when I convert this into a stacked vector, this first pixel becomes neighbor to only one pixel 182, and rest of the neighbors go away from this particular pixel. So the spatial information in the space, the information that we have because of the jointly occurring pixels, that information is somewhat lost. So I cannot use an image. I should not flatten this image, convert it into a vector, and then apply to a neural network. Rather, what I should do is, and then there are a few other problems also, like for example, I will have a too many parameters in the neural network to be tuned, and that makes the computation even more extensive. So what I do is I'm just directly going to the convolution operation. What I do is I take the parameters in this box form. Suppose I have this input image, I'm considering a single channel input image, what we call a grayscale image, and I am considering a small kernel or filter. Each entry of the kernel is a parameter of the neural network, and what I do with it is basically I put the kernel here at the left top position of the image, and then I multiply. Suppose these are my weights of the neural network W1, W2, W3 up to W9, and these are the pixel values of the image. What I basically do is this operation tells that I multiply W1 with V11, W2 with V12, W3 with V13, W4 with V21, and so on, right? So the entry of the kernel, the parameter of the kernel is multiplied with the corresponding entry in the input image, and then the product are summed up. So basically what I do is I take this product W1 V11, W2 V12, and so on, and then sum them up. And with the summed value, I replace the center pixel of this small region, right? So what I essentially do is I take the sum of the product and replace the center pixel. This center pixel is replaced with the update. Then what I want, I slightly slide this kernel to the next position, and again the center pixels is replaced by the weighted sum of this position of the kernel parameters and the corresponding pixel value. Then I shift it again to right, and I replace the center pixel, and I go on doing this, right? So basically what I do is like this. I have a kernel which is indicated by red, and I place this kernel here at starting from the left top position. I slide it, and at every position I replace the center pixel with the weighted summation of the pixel values in the neighboring region, and this particular thing is called a feature map produced by the convolutional kernel. These particular red colored rectangular square region is called a kernel, and or a convolutional kernel, with which I generate an output which is called a feature map. So by applying the kernel on this particular image, I produce a feature map, and when I apply an activation function, so this feature map is basically a linear summation, right? It's a linear operation, and when I apply an activation function on this feature map, I get an activated output feature map, which is a non-linear feature map with respect to the input. This is how convolution operation is performed. If I have a color image, which is a 3-channel image, my convolutional kernel also has to be a 3-channel kernel, and the green kernel is multiplied with the green channel. This kernel, the purple kernel is multiplied with the purple channel, the yellow kernel is multiplied with the yellow channel, and all these products are summed up to produce one pixel of the feature map. Then I move this entire kernel towards right side, and then I produce the second pixel of the feature map. In that way, I produce this linear feature map when I apply an activation on this linear feature map, I get the non-linear feature map as the output. So this is how the convolution operation works, and this is one convolution filter which will produce one feature map. In that way, you can have multiple convolutional filters generating multiple feature map, and each feature map basically extract some characteristics of the input image, which can be like as simple as edge characteristics, corner characteristics, texture characteristics, shape characteristics of the object. Everything like that can be captured. Some of such features can be captured with the help of a kernel. And so this feature map basically captures one type of feature. The feature map at the bottom capture a different type of feature, and then we stack them together, add a bias term, apply an activation function, and get some output feature map. So this is how the convolution layer works. This is another representation of the convolution layer. And then I just want to show you one particular interesting idea, which is the total. This is how the entire convolution layer is represented. We have convolution stage and then nonlinear stage, and there is something called a pooling stage. In pooling, what we do is, suppose I have this feature map and we identify a small region, and from that I find out the maximum value. This is called max pooling, right? And then I slide this region, and from the next region I again find out the maximum value. Here the example is clearer. I take this small region and find out the maximum value, that is 5. I put it here, and then I look at this small region and find out the maximum value, that is 9 here, right? And this pooling basically provides us a summary of this entire feature map. And when I, instead of taking the entire feature map, when I take the pooling and pass it to the next layer, this actually helps in reducing the total feature map and also helps in reducing the computation, this, and removing the redundancies in the information. The strategy of the pooling is inspired from our neural network architecture of human body as well, where it says that our neurons, our nerve cells, responds most with the highest value of the input sensations. So similar idea, the highest value of this particular region is propagated to the next region. This is called pooling operation. I'll just quickly show you one interesting neural network. VGG16. It's a very, very successful neural network where I have an image as input, right? And then I have several convolution layers. And finally, the output, you can see that as I move forward, the size of the convolution layers change. And then eventually, I have smaller convolution feature maps. And then I flatten those feature maps. I had 2 or 3 dimensional representation of the feature map. I convert those entries into a vector, and then eventually I make a decision about the class of the object that is present in the input image. For example, this particular neural network model can do a image classification, let's say among 1,000 different classes, which can be some car, tree, maybe tiger, lion, etc., etc. Whichever image you apply, from that image some features are extracted, and then processed feature map are generated, subsequent feature maps are generated, and this way the information propagates. Eventually those feature maps are converted into a vector, and then the class levels are decided at the final level. So there are other models like UNet also, which can be used for the task like image segmentation. And we have more advanced model like DenseNet, which can also do a lot of image classification. It consists of something called a dense connection. And there are many more models, whichever application you talk about. We have a lot of different models which can be used for doing certain type of task with the images, right? So I stop here. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask.
Participants may ask whatever queries they have. Anyone from the participant? You may ask your queries. Excuse me, sir. I have one. I want to know about kernels. Can you elaborate a little bit about kernels?
Yeah, sure. I hope you can still see my slides, right?
Yes, sir. They are visible.
Yeah. So actually, I have a lot of, I can keep on talking about this, but I just kept it a little bit compressed to fit it within time. So kernel is nothing but the parameters of the neural network arranged in a rectangular fashion, right? As you can see here in this example, this is my kernel. Kernel tells that your neural network parameters are arranged in a rectangular fashion. So these W1, W2, W3, all these are neural network parameters. In a fully connected neural network, wherever I had a connection between one node to another node, I had a neural network parameter. Here, the same neural network parameters are arranged in a square shape, right? So, if you remember, in a normal fully connected neural network, I was multiplying the neural network parameter with the input and then taking the sum of this. Exact same thing I am doing here. These are image pixel values, V11, V12, V13. These are image pixel values. I am multiplying them with the respective entries in the kernel. For example, V11 is getting multiplied with W1, V12 getting multiplied with W2, and then summing them up here. And the center pixel of this particular region covered by the kernel is being replaced with this summed up value. This is the updated value or the feature map being produced by the kernel. This is the role of the kernel. And the kernel starts from the left top corner of the image and then slides through the entire image. What would be the stride of the slide? That is something you can decide. It is, if you see this example, it is at the left top position and then it is moving by one column to the right, then moving by one column to the right. Again, this is called stride. You can have your kernel to move by two columns as well, right? That is called stride, and you have to decide based on your prior experiences or some other strategies how much stride you want to take. Okay, this is how kernel works. Now, if you have three-dimensional image, a three-channel image like this one, or any number of channels, let's say you have a 10-channel feature map, and on that you want to apply a kernel, your kernel also has to be 10 channel. Okay, so the channel in the kernel will be equal to the number of channels in the input to that kernel. So here I have a 3-channel input, and my kernel is also 3-channel. There I multiply this green pixel, green kernel parameter with the corresponding green pixel in the input, then the purple one with the purple and the yellow one with the yellow, and I do this multiplication for the entire region, entire 3x3 region, because the kernel is 3x3, and sum all of them up to generate the first pixel here in the feature map. In that way, I repeat this process for the entire input and get this feature map here. And when I apply an activation, I get the final nonlinear feature map.
Thank you, sir. Anyone, any other query from participants? I think, sir, no query, but they are sharing their feedbacks, like or their observation, like just
So could we get translation? We could see some of the slides explaining translation pattern, how the translation pattern in computational convolution works.
Are you talking about language translation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so we can talk about that at length, but unfortunately, I need another 1.5 hour session for that. because language translation is done by a group of neural networks which are called sequence models, right? And it requires a complete session by itself. In fact, if you look at the curriculum of the university, for example, in IIT Jodhpur, we have a natural language understanding course, entire course. But at least I can tell you this: there are certain models like sequence model, recurrent neural network, and there are certain models like transformers, which tries to exploit the contextual dependence between different words, right? And that contextual dependence is captured together uh, to produce an output in a different language. If you give one moment, I can just show you probably one slide
Yes, sir.
translation.
One slide, one or two slide. You just skipped that time.
Okay, okay. Just give me a moment. I because you asked this question, I am also feeling tempted to show you one example of a translation with a model called transform.
Ji, sir. Ji, sir.
Dr. Lata, I think you can allow me 2-3 minutes, right?
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Please kindly go ahead, sir.
Okay. I need a moment to find out the slide. Okay, I got it. Wait a moment.
No issues, sir.
I hope you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So this is called. So this is actually a part of my lecture, which I present during the discussion on transformer. So suppose you are trying to do a translation from English to Hindi, right? Where there is a will, there is a way, right? And you want to do the translation to Hindi, which can be "Jahan cha hai, wahan raha hai," right? So there is something called an encoder of a transformer neural network model, which creates some kind of representation of your entire input and creates something called a key and value pair, right? How this key and value pair are created, that's a heavy mathematical discussion and completely beyond the scope right now. I need to give a lot of information before that, but assume that some kind of representation of this entire sentence is created by focusing on each of the word and their contextual information. For example, if I focus on this word "there," I also need to focus on the word "will," because I'm talking about a relation between the word "there" and the word "will," right? So there is something called an attention mechanism. Through that attention mechanism, I create a compact representation, some kind of compact representation of this entire sentence, and create a key value pair, which goes to the decoder. At the time of the training of the neural network, I tell this neural network that, see, these key value pair corresponds to the Hindi sentence "jahan cha hai wahan ra hai." This SOS indicates starts of sentence and EOS indicates end of sentence. So basically, how the neural network learns, when I pass this entire sentence, when the SOS token goes in, the next token is predicted by the neural network, which the neural network learns to predict the next token, which is jahan, right? So I feed in the start of sentence token and the neural network learns to predict the next token, jahan. Then I feed the I got the first predicted token and that comes back and goes in again to the decoder. So I feed in SOS and Jaha. From this, the neural network starts predicting the next word, which is cha, right? Then comes SOS, Jaha, and cha, and this decoder predicts the next token, which is hai. In that way, this goes on, and eventually the neural network learns to predict this. uh, if I have, for example, this translation uh, and the key and value pair is computed, the SOS token goes in and the output token is I. So the neural network actually translates. Do you know the meaning of this? Probably not. I also forgot what is the meaning of it. So this SOS goes in and the neural network predicts I, and then SOS and I goes in, neural network predicts wish, and then this comes back and SOS I and wish predicts you, and then this comes back, SOS I wish and you predicts all, and then comes back and predicts the next word D, and then D comes back and the next word is predicted best. So this entire sentence, by the help of the decoder, get translated into I wish you all the best, right? So this is how it's a very broad overview, very quick glimpse of how the encoder decoder framework can do the translation for you. And that's how actually the translation that you use regularly, this is how exactly this works. I hope I could give you some glimpse of how it works.
Yes, sir. Very nicely explained. Any other question? So I think, sir, now new question from the participants, but they have expressed gratitude. Thank you, sir. Interesting session, nice, sir. Informative session, informative and valuable session. So excellent session. Yes, Mrs. Sukeshi, do you have any question? Okay, no questions. So may I request, so on behalf of the Department of Applied Sciences, Poornima Institute of Engineering Technology, I wish to express my gratitude for delivering such a wonderful and informative session, giving your consent for delivering this lecture, taking some time among your busy schedules. So thank you very much, sir. Now, may I request all the participants to turn on their cameras so that we may have one group photograph. May we have one group photograph for this technical session? Okay, thank you once again, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I wish everyone all the best and have a very successful FDP program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again. See you some other day very soon, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, sir. So all the participants are now requested to fill the feedback form shared in the WhatsApp group so that attendance can be marked accordingly by tomorrow 9 a.m. So all of us may leave now. Thank you. Good night to one and all. Yeah, yes, I can share the email ID. Just a minute. Kindly note, I have shared the email ID of the sir in the chat box, as well as I'm going to share in the WhatsApp group also. I wish to also share one more thing about the achievement of our guest, Dr. Angshuman Paul. So I hope all of us enjoyed and learned a lot from this session. So see you all tomorrow at 6 for the technical session 9. Till then, good night to one and all.